The poor singer who healed a broken man, not knowing he was a billionaire, returning to buy the tea room because of her. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. On a cold and rainy evening, Elena Carter stepped onto the small wooden stage of the Sunrise Tea Lounge. The room was dim, filled with soft yellow lights that hung like fading stars above the customers. The scent of warm tea drifted through the air, mixing with the quiet hum of conversation. This place was old, worn, and barely surviving, but it was the only place where Elena felt she could breathe. Her acoustic guitar rested against her hip as she began a slow melody. Her voice carried gently through the room, warm enough to soften even the heaviest mood. Singing was not just her job, it was the one steady thing she had left after years of financial struggle. Most nights, she earned just enough to keep her tiny apartment and cover basic bills, but she never stopped singing. Outside, the rain grew heavier. Inside, only a few regulars sat scattered along the tables, sipping their drinks in silence. Then the bell over the door chimed. A tall man stepped in, soaked from the storm. Rainwater dripped from his hair onto the wooden floor. His white shirt clung to him, completely drenched. His shoulders were tense, and he moved with the uneasy steps of someone who had lost more than just a relationship. He headed for the darkest corner of the room, barely lifting his head. That man was Evan Ward, though Elena had no idea who he was. To her, he looked like a man holding on by a thread. From the stage, she noticed the despair in his posture, the way he leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands covering his face. It was not the quiet reflection of someone tired after a long day. It was the heavy collapse of a heart that had been broken without warning. The kind of pain Elena recognized immediately. Her song slowed. Her fingers hesitated. She ended the melody earlier than planned. The owner glanced at her confused, but Elena placed her guitar down gently and stepped off the stage. Something deep inside told her she could not ignore this stranger's pain. She walked toward the corner, stopping at his table. "Sir?" she asked softly. He lifted his head, and Elena felt her breath catch. His eyes were red and tired, holding the raw look of someone who had lost something important. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I just needed somewhere quiet." "You are in the right place," Elena answered. She picked up a clean towel from the counter and set it down in front of him. "Dry yourself. You will get sick." He hesitated, then took it with shaking hands. "Thank you." Elena sat across from him, not too close, giving him room to breathe. She waited without pressure, letting him decide if he wanted to speak. Finally, he did. "She left," he said. "The woman I loved. She ended everything tonight." Elena nodded gently. "I am sorry. Heartbreak is a storm that does not warn you before it hits." He swallowed hard, struggling to keep himself together. Without replying, Elena stood, walked to the counter, and returned with a steaming cup of lemon ginger tea. She placed it in front of him. "This helped me once," she said. "Maybe it will help you tonight." He looked at the cup, then looked at her, confused by her kindness. "Why are you doing this? You do not even know me." Elena offered a soft smile. "You look like someone who needs kindness. That is reason enough." A faint breath escaped him, as if her presence eased a part of the weight he carried. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside this small tea lounge on an ordinary night, a broken man found a moment of peace in the warmth of a stranger's voice. Evan Ward would never forget this night, and Elena Carter had no idea that this quiet act of compassion would bring him back into her life in the most unexpected way. The rain eased into a gentle drizzle as the night went on, but inside the Sunrise Tea Lounge, the quiet energy remained unchanged. Elena Carter returned to the stage after leaving Evan Ward with his cup of tea, though she found it difficult to focus on the music. Her fingers moved across the guitar strings, but part of her attention stayed fixed on the man sitting alone in the corner. She could feel the heaviness around him, like a shadow trailing behind his every breath. Evan sat with his hands wrapped loosely around the warm cup, steam rising softly against his tired face. He took a slow sip, and for a moment something fragile and human flickered in his eyes. He looked around the room as if noticing it for the first time, the faded wallpaper, the chipped tables, the small string lights that flickered unevenly above him. It was not a glamorous place, but it had a kind of warmth he had not felt in a long time. Elena continued singing, her voice calm and steady. The song was gentle, the kind meant to soothe strangers who carried heavy hearts. Evan lifted his head slightly, watching her. There was something in the way she sang that seemed to settle the air around him, something that reached into the space between his ribs where the ache still lived. When she finished the set for the night, Elena stepped down from the stage, collecting her guitar and placing it carefully into its worn case. The customers began to leave one by one with soft goodnights and warm smiles. Soon the room was nearly empty, except for her, the owner, and Evan, who still sat quietly in the corner. Elena approached him again, her steps gentle. "Do you feel a little better?" she asked. He looked up at her, surprised she cared enough to check on him twice. "A little," he said honestly. "Tonight has been difficult." "Heartbreak often is," she replied. "It can make the world feel heavier than it is." Evan ran a hand through his damp hair, the exhaustion settling deep in his features. "I did not expect it. I thought we were fine. I thought she loved me." He shook his head slowly, the disbelief still raw. Then she said she was done. She walked out and closed the door behind her. Elena's expression softened. Sometimes people leave because they cannot see your worth. That does not mean it is gone. He held her gaze for a moment, and something in his posture shifted. Not joy, not hope, but the slightest release of tension, as if her words created a small opening in the wall he had built around himself. "You have a gentle way of speaking," he said. "It makes things feel less impossible." Elena laughed softly. "It is just honesty. And maybe a little experience. You have been through something like this." Elena looked down at her hands. "Not the same, but enough to understand what pain looks like." The owner approached, wiping his hands on a small towel. "We are closing soon, Elena. Do you need a ride home?" She shook her head. "No, thank you. I will be fine." Then she turned back to Evan. "Do you need a ride? You should not walk home in the rain." He hesitated. A part of him clearly did not want to burden her, but another part felt the kindness she offered and recognized how rare it was. "No, I will be all right," he said quietly. "But thank you for asking." Elena nodded and picked up her guitar case. "Come back if you need a quiet place again. The tea is warm, and the music helps." Evan lowered his gaze. "It did help," he said. "More than you know." As she headed toward the door, she paused and looked back at him. There was something unspoken between them, a fragile connection born from a moment of shared vulnerability. She gave him one last small smile before stepping out into the cool night air. Evan watched the door close behind her, feeling a strange warmth settle in his chest. The night had broken him, but this place, this voice, this kindness had kept him from falling apart completely. He did not know why a stranger's comfort meant so much, but he knew he would return. The next evening at the Sunrise Tea Lounge felt different, though nothing in the room had physically changed. The same string lights flickered softly above the tables. The same warm scent of tea and citrus drifted through the air. The same small crowd filled their usual seats, ready for Elena Carter's calming voice. But Elena felt something she could not quite name, a quiet awareness lingering beneath her ribs. She tried to shake it off, telling herself it was simply the weight of last night's conversation with the heartbroken stranger in the corner. Evan Ward. She had repeated his name in her mind without meaning to. When the clock struck 8, Elena stepped onto the stage with her guitar. Her voice flowed through the room, rich and warm, filling the small lounge with the kind of calm people came here searching for. But her eyes drifted to the door more often than usual. She told herself she was being silly. A stranger she helped once would not necessarily return, but he did. Halfway through her second song, the bell chimed softly and Evan stepped inside. Tonight he looked different. Still tired, still recovering, but not drenched and broken. His clothes were dry, neat and clean. His hair was combed back, revealing the sharp lines of his face that Elena had not noticed in the dim light the night before. He carried himself with a quiet stiffness, as if he was trying to hold himself together with every step. He chose the same corner seat. For a brief moment, Elena's voice faltered. The customers did not seem to notice, but she did. She steadied herself and continued, letting the melody settle back into its rhythm. When her set ended 20 minutes later, Elena stepped off the stage, unsure if she should approach him again. She did not want to intrude, but when she glanced in his direction, she found him looking at her with a small, hesitant nod, as if silently asking for the same kindness she had given him last night. So she walked toward him. "Hi," she said gently. "You came back." "Yes," Evan replied. "I needed somewhere that feels quiet." She smiled softly. "Then you chose the right place again." Before she could say anything else, the owner approached with a refilled pot of tea, setting it down with a knowing look. "Your friend back again?" he asked Elena quietly. She shook her head. "He is not my friend, not exactly." But when she glanced at Evan, she saw a faint warmth touch his expression. The owner walked away, and Elena sat across from Evan just like before. Up close, she noticed subtle details she had missed the night before. The faint, dark circles under his eyes, the tension still held in his jaw, the way his hands rested on the table like he was bracing himself against something invisible. "Are you feeling any better today?" she asked. "A little," Evan said. "I slept. That alone feels like a small miracle." "Sleep helps," Elena replied. "So does time, but healing is not a race." He gave a quiet, almost sad laugh. "You speak like someone who has lived more than people expect." "I suppose I have," she answered. For a moment they sat in comfortable silence. The soft buzz of conversation and clinking teacups filled the space between them. Then Evan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded slip of paper. He set it gently on the table. "I wanted to give this back to you," he said. Elena unfolded it and found the towel she had given him the night before, neatly pressed and clean. "You did not have to return this," she said. "I wanted to," he replied. "It meant something to me." Her chest warmed at his sincerity. As the minutes passed, customers began to leave. The lounge slowly emptied, leaving the gentle hum of a dishwasher running in the back and the soft glow of the remaining lights. Elena felt the quiet settle into her skin. "You helped me yesterday," Evan said at last. "More than I know how to explain." "I am glad I could," Elena replied. "Sometimes, that is all we need. Just one person who stays for a moment." He met her eyes, and for the first time, the sadness did not swallow the entire expression on his face. "May I come back again?" he asked quietly. Elena smiled. "If this place brings you peace, then yes. Come back whenever you need." Evan nodded slowly, almost gratefully. He did not know why her presence felt so grounding. She did not know why his return sparked something gentle in her chest. But both of them felt the beginning of something they could not name. The following evening, the Sunrise Tea Lounge carried an unusual sense of anticipation. The same warm lights glowed above the tables, the same soft music played from the overhead speakers before Elena's set, yet something in the air felt subtly different. Perhaps it was Elena Carter herself, moving through the room with a quiet awareness she could not quite shake. She told herself she was simply preparing for another night of singing, but deep down she knew she was waiting. Not hoping, not expecting, just waiting in a way she had never done before. When the clock neared 8, Elena stepped onto the stage with her guitar. She began her first song, her voice steady and gentle. The regulars lifted their heads, letting her music ease them into the evening. But Elena's eyes drifted toward the entrance more often than she intended. And as if timed by some invisible force, the bell chimed. Evan Ward walked in again. Tonight he looked more composed, wearing a dark gray jacket and a collared shirt. His posture was not as defeated as before, though traces of sadness still lingered around his eyes. He paused briefly when he saw Elena on stage, then moved quietly to the same corner he had chosen the last 2 nights. Elena steadied her breath and continued singing. Once her set ended, she stepped off the stage and approached him. "You are here again," she said softly. "I told you this place helps," Evan replied. "It feels quieter than the rest of the world." She smiled. "That is one way to describe this place." Tonight the lounge was fuller than usual. Customers chatted softly while the owner hurried between tables. A couple laughed in the corner, and a small group of college students ordered extra tea and pastries. It was livelier than the previous nights, which made the quiet tension between Elena and Evan somehow more noticeable. Evan looked around slowly. "This is a nice place," he said, "small but sincere." "It is falling apart," Elena corrected gently. "But yes, it is sincere." He tilted his head. "Falling apart, how so?" Elena hesitated, then sighed. The lights break every month, the kitchen appliances barely work, and the owner is behind on rent again. Some nights we barely have enough customers to keep the doors open. This place survives because he loves it, and because I love it too." Evan absorbed her words, his expression tightening slightly. "So the financial situation is bad. It has been bad for a long time," Elena said quietly. "But the owner keeps trying. I keep singing. We hold it together however we can." She did not notice the way Evan's gaze deepened, troubled by the idea of this small lounge disappearing, troubled more by the thought of Elena losing the stage where she seemed most alive. The owner approached, then wiping his hands on his apron. "Elena, could you help me for a second?" he asked. She excused herself and walked to the counter. Evan watched from his seat as she helped replace a flickering bulb near the entrance, standing on a small step stool while steadying herself on the wall. The owner held the stool, talking about rent, old equipment, and a broken freezer that would cost too much to repair. Evan heard every word. His jaw clenched slightly. The lounge was not just struggling, it was close to collapsing. While Elena worked, Evan stood and slowly walked around the room, observing details he had not noticed before. The chipped paint, the worn chairs, the loose wiring near the ceiling, the faded sign near the door announcing weekly performances. Despite its flaws, the place carried warmth, largely because of her. When Elena returned to him, she smiled apologetically. "Sorry. Things around here always need fixing. You do a lot for this place," he said quietly. "It gives me a stage," she replied. "It gives me purpose." "And what about your dreams?" Evan asked. Elena blinked. "My dreams, yes," he said. "You speak with such warmth when you talk about music. What do you want for your life?" Elena looked down at her hands. "I want to make this place into something more. A place where people can heal through music. A place where someone walking in from the rain like you did feels a little less alone." Her honesty struck him deeply. He opened his mouth to respond, but a group of loud customers entered, interrupting the moment. Elena stood, giving him a soft nod before returning to the counter to help serve drinks. Evan watched her move with kindness and purpose, tending to customers, fixing small problems, singing between tasks. And something settled inside him, a decision he did not voice aloud. He would not let this place fall apart. And he would definitely not let her lose the one thing that gave her strength. The next few days at the Sunrise Tea Lounge passed with a quiet rhythm, and Evan Ward returned each evening, always choosing the same corner seat. He spoke little, but his presence became familiar, almost comforting. Elena Carter noticed that each night he looked a little steadier, a little less weighed down by heartbreak. Yet she also sensed something new behind his eyes, something thoughtful and unspoken. One evening, after finishing her first set, Elena walked over to Evan's table as usual. "You are getting better at showing up," she said lightly. "It is because this place feels different from everywhere else," he replied. "It feels honest." She laughed softly. "Honest is a nice word for old and falling apart." Evan shook his head. "No. Honest is a place that keeps people grounded." Before Elena could respond, the owner motioned her over. She excused herself and walked to the counter where the owner held a stack of papers, his face pale. "Elena," he whispered, "the landlord is raising the rent again. I do not know how we will manage this time." Elena's stomach sank. "What are you going to do?" "I do not know," he admitted. "We are behind already. One more push, and we might have to close." Evan overheard every word. His jaw tightened, concern flashing in his eyes. He watched Elena lean closer to the owner, speaking quietly, offering ideas, proposing late-night acoustic events, discounted tea hours, anything to keep the doors open. She was fighting for this place with everything she had. After the conversation, Elena returned to Evan, trying to mask the worry in her expression. But Evan saw through it immediately. "Elena," he said gently, "what is going on?" She hesitated. "The landlord raised the rent again. We cannot keep up. I do not know how much longer this place can hold on." "Does this place mean that much to you?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, this stage saved me in ways I cannot explain. And people come here to heal. I want to keep it alive. But love alone does not pay rent." Evan looked around the lounge. The faded wallpaper, the chipped tables, the flickering lights, the flaws were obvious, but so was the heart of the place. It was more than a building. It was a sanctuary. He leaned forward slightly. If you had the chance, what would you change about this place? Elena blinked, surprised by the question. I would fix the lights, repair the wiring, replace the chairs, update the stage. Maybe bring in more musicians. Maybe create a small healing corner with journals and instruments for people to try. Something warm, something real. Her voice softened. I would make it a place people could rely on, not a place barely surviving. Evan listened carefully, memorizing every word, every small dream she revealed. There is beauty in what you want, he said quietly. Elena laughed gently. Beauty does not pay rent either. He gave no reaction on the surface, but beneath the calm expression, a resolve formed, steady, firm, and absolute. Moments later, a loud crack echoed across the room as one of the overhead bulbs flickered violently and went out. Elena sighed and grabbed a step stool, ready to fix it. Evan instinctively stood as if ready to help, but he stopped himself, watching her climb the stool carefully. She stretched up to tighten the bulb, her hair falling forward as she worked. The light flickered, then steadied. She stepped down with a relieved smile. Evan watched her with a quiet, growing certainty. This place mattered to her. She mattered to him more than he wanted to admit, and he knew then, without saying it aloud, that he would not allow this small tea lounge, or the kindness that lived here, to disappear. Over the next several evenings, Evan Ward continued returning to the Sunrise Tea Lounge, though something about his presence began to shift. He was still quiet, still gentle, but his eyes carried a new purpose. He watched not only Elena Carter, but also the fragile state of the lounge itself. He noticed the customers who hesitated at the door because of the flickering sign. He noticed the way the owner tried to hide the stress in his voice. He noticed Elena trying to hold everything together with her music and small acts of care. One night, Elena finished her second set and walked toward Evan's table as usual. He looked at her with an expression she could not quite decipher, half admiration, half concern. You seemed lost in thought, she said softly. I was thinking, Evan replied, about how much people rely on this place, even if it does not look like much from the outside. Elena glanced around. It is not perfect, but it is home to me. And to some of our customers too. And what about the man who runs it? Evan asked. He must be exhausted. He is, Elena admitted, but he will never say it out loud. He is afraid if he does, the place will fall apart even faster. Evan nodded slowly. And you, are you afraid of losing it? Elena hesitated, then answered with quiet honesty. Yes. More than I want to admit. Before she could say more, the door opened, and a sharply dressed man stepped inside. His suit was polished, his shoes new, and his presence seemed to unsettle the air around him. He looked around the lounge with a mixture of impatience and judgment, as if nothing about the place met his standards. The owner hurried toward him. Mr. Dalton, I did not expect you tonight. Elena stiffened. She knew the landlord by name, but had never seen him in person. Evan watched the exchange closely, his jaw tightening. Mr. Dalton spoke with a forced smile. I am here to remind you that the deadline is approaching. If the rent increase is not paid by the end of the month, I will have no choice but to take further action. The owner's face paled. Please, I just need a little more time. I have already given you time, Dalton said coldly. His gaze swept the room, dismissive, almost disgusted. This place barely brings in enough customers as it is. Elena stepped forward, unable to stay silent. You cannot close this place. People need it. Dalton raised an eyebrow. People need a stable business, Miss Carter. Not this. His tone made the word "this" sound like an insult. Evan rose from his chair, no longer able to stay seated. You speak as if you know the heart of this place, he said calmly. But it seems to me you only see numbers. Dalton turned to him. And who are you exactly? Evan paused. He could have given his full name. He could have ended this conversation in one breath. But he did not yet. Just someone who understands value when he sees it, he replied. Dalton scoffed. Well, unless you plan to cover their debts, your opinion does not matter. He walked out without another word, leaving a cold heaviness behind him. The owner rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed. Elena stood frozen, trying not to let tears surface. The customers pretended not to notice, but the room's warmth felt dimmer. Evan watched Elena closely. Her shoulders were tight, her eyes focused on the floor, her breath uneven. She cared too deeply to hide how much the threat had shaken her. Elena, he said gently, you do not have to face this alone. She looked at him, startled by the firmness in his voice. What do you mean? I mean, he said quietly, that when something matters, someone has to step forward and protect it. You speak as if you have the power to fix this, she whispered. Evan held her gaze for a long moment. Maybe I do, he said softly. Or maybe I will find a way. Before she could respond, the owner called her to help with a small issue near the counter, leaving Evan standing alone, deep in thought. He watched her move across the room, the same determination in her steps that he had seen from the first night. She deserved safety. She deserved stability. She deserved a space where her voice could reach people without fear of losing it. That was the moment when Evan's earlier certainty hardened into a final decision. He would not simply help. He would take action, and he would not let this tea lounge or the woman who had saved him be swallowed by circumstances she did not deserve. The Sunrise Tea Lounge felt unusually tense the next night. The lights still glowed softly and the smell of warm citrus tea drifted through the air, but the atmosphere carried a quiet heaviness. Elena Carter tried to focus on her music, but her mind kept replaying the landlord's cold warning from the night before. Each note she played felt slightly heavier, as if the fear of losing the lounge clung to her fingertips. After her first set, Elena stepped down from the stage, forcing a small smile as she moved through the room. She glanced toward the corner instinctively, and there he was, Evan Ward, already seated, already watching her, with the same quiet intensity that had become familiar. But tonight his expression seemed more serious, more resolved. When she approached him, he stood before she even spoke. "Elena," he said gently, "sit with me for a moment." She nodded and sat across from him. "You look like something is weighing on you." He took a slow breath. "There are things I need to tell you. Things I should not have waited this long to say." Her heart skipped. His tone was different, calm, but with a quiet tension underneath. "You do not owe me anything," she said softly. "I owe you the truth," Evan replied. "And I owe this place more than silence." Before she could ask what he meant, the door swung open. "The landlord, Mr." Dalton stepped inside again, followed by two men in suits. The owner froze behind the counter. The customers fell silent. Elena's stomach dropped. Dalton scanned the room briefly before speaking. "I am here to notify you that the building will be reviewed for transfer of ownership. The current lease is no longer sustainable." Elena stepped forward. "Transfer? To who?" Dalton smirked. "The buyer will reveal that when the contract is final." Fear tightened her chest. Losing the tea lounge meant losing everything that kept her grounded. Evan rose from his chair slowly, his expression unreadable. "Is this necessary tonight?" he asked. Dalton glanced at him with irritation. "This is business. It will proceed whether you approve or not." Evan took one step forward, his calm voice steady. "And has the contract been signed?" Dalton's eyes narrowed. "It will be very soon." The tension grew thick in the air. Then the door opened again. This time, a sharply dressed woman entered, confident, efficient, carrying a briefcase and a folder of legal documents. She walked directly toward Evan with purpose. "Mr. Ward," she said professionally, "the documents for the acquisition are ready. The transfer will be finalized as soon as you sign." The room fell silent. Elena's eyes widened as she slowly turned toward Evan, confusion pulsing through her. "Mr. Ward," Dalton repeated, his voice cracking slightly. "Ward. As in, Evan Ward." The name hung in the air like a shockwave. One of the wealthiest private investors in the state. A man known for discreet acquisitions and silent philanthropy. A man whose influence could save or destroy a business with the stroke of a pen. Evan's expression remained steady as he finally revealed himself. "Yes," he said calmly. "I am that Ward." Elena froze, unable to process it. The quiet, broken stranger she had comforted was a billionaire. Dalton stuttered. I did not know. That much is clear," Evan replied. Everyone watched in stunned silence as the attorney opened the folder, revealing the transfer contract with the Sunrise Tea Lounge's name printed at the top. Elena stepped back, her breath uneven. "Evan, what is happening?" He turned to her, his voice soft but steady. "I did not come here to deceive you. I came broken and you helped me when you had no reason to. You gave me kindness without knowing anything about me." She stared at him, heart pounding. "And when I saw how much this place meant to you," he continued, "I could not stand by and watch it disappear." Dalton swallowed nervously. So, you are the buyer? Yes, Evan said. And the transfer will be completed tonight. Dalton hurried out of the lounge in embarrassment, leaving an uneasy silence behind. Elena slowly shook her head, overwhelmed. You bought the lounge, because of me, because of what you gave me, Evan said softly. Peace, hope. A place to breathe when I had no other place to go. Her eyes glistened, caught between shock and disbelief. Evan stepped closer, his expression open and honest. I did not reveal who I was, because I did not want you to see me differently. But I cannot hide the truth anymore. The room remained still. Customers held their breath. The owner watched with wide eyes. Elena whispered, I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything yet, Evan replied gently. Just know that I am here. I am not leaving. And I will not let this place disappear. In that moment, Elena realized everything she thought she knew about him had shifted. The man she saved was not just a stranger in the rain. He was a man who had come back with the power to change everything. The Sunrise Tea Lounge felt frozen in place after the reveal. The customers whispered among themselves, the owner stood speechless behind the counter, and Elena Carter struggled to steady her breath. The man she had comforted in the darkest corner of the room was not just Evan. He was Evan Ward, a billionaire investor whose name she had only heard in news headlines. And now he stood only a few feet away, looking at her with a mixture of sincerity and quiet fear, as if he worried her next words might break him all over again. Elena, he said softly, I know this is overwhelming, but everything I have done was because of what you did for me. She swallowed hard, trying to make sense of it. You came into this place like someone who had nothing left. And now you tell me you own this lounge. I did not plan it, he answered. I just knew that I could not let it disappear. Not after what it gave me. The owner approached timidly. Mr. Ward, does this mean we are safe? Evan turned to him with a calm nod. Yes, the lounge will not close. I will stabilize the finances and make sure everything is repaired properly. The owner let out a breath of relief so deep it seemed his whole body softened. But Elena remained still, her heart pounding with a different kind of tension. Evan stepped closer to her. I understand if you are angry. I should have told you sooner. But the night you saved me, I did not want to be anyone but the broken man you saw. Elena lowered her gaze. I am not angry. I am confused. I just do not know what this means. It means, Evan said gently, that you will never lose this place. Not now, not ever. I meant what I said last night. When something matters, someone must protect it. She shook her head slightly. You did all this because you felt grateful. No, he replied. I did this because you showed me what compassion looks like when you expect nothing in return. You gave me peace. You gave me a night of safety. And I wanted to give you something that lasts. His attorney stepped forward with the folder. Mr. Ward, the final documents require your signature. Evan opened the folder and signed the acquisition page without hesitating. The room grew even quieter as the ink dried, a symbolic act that shifted the future of the tea lounge forever. The attorney closed the folder and stepped back. Evan looked at Elena again. There is something else I want to show you. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small object. Elena's breath caught when she saw it. Her towel, freshly folded, neatly pressed. You gave this to me when I had nothing but rain and heartbreak, he said softly. I kept it because it reminded me of the moment someone saw me as a human being, not a name or a title. Elena felt her throat tighten. She had forgotten about the towel, but he had not. Evan continued. And now that I have bought this place, I do not want to own it alone. I want you to be part of its future. She blinked, unable to speak. Part. How he handed her a second document. This room is yours as much as it is mine. I want you to be the co-owner of the Sunrise Tea Lounge. The words struck her like a wave. Elena, he said, your music is the heartbeat of this place. You keep its doors open with your kindness and your voice. I am only giving structure to what you already built with heart. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I never asked for this. And I am not giving it to you because you asked, Evan said softly. I am giving it because you deserve it. She looked at the contract in her hands, then back at him. His sincerity was undeniable, steady and warm. For the first time since she met him, he no longer looked like a broken man. He looked like someone who had found a reason to stand tall again. The owner placed a gentle hand on Elena's shoulder. "You saved this place, Elena. Now let it save you back." The room filled with a quiet, reverent silence. Evan waited, not demanding, not rushing, simply standing there with his heart open and his intentions clear. Elena exhaled shakily, her voice barely above a whisper. I need a moment." "Take all the time you need," Evan said. "I am not going anywhere." And for the first time since the stormy night she met him, Elena believed him. The next evening arrived with a calmness that felt entirely different from the nights before. For the first time in a long while, the Sunrise Tea Lounge was not weighed down by fear. The lights glowed steadily. The tables were filled with customers who had heard rumors about the dramatic events from the day before. And behind the counter, the owner moved with renewed energy, no longer burdened by the crushing uncertainty of losing everything. But Elena Carter was still quiet. She stood backstage with her guitar held close, trying to steady her breath. The contract Evan had offered her rested folded inside her bag, untouched since the night before. She had spent hours thinking about it, hours wondering how a single act of kindness had turned into something that could change her entire future. When she finally stepped onto the stage, the room softened into silence. Her fingers began to move across the guitar strings, releasing a melody that felt lighter than anything she had played in weeks. Her voice flowed gently, filling the room with warmth. Customers leaned into the sound, and even the owner paused to listen. Evan arrived halfway through the song. He stood near the entrance for a moment, watching her. Tonight, he did not sit in his usual corner. Instead, he moved slowly toward the front, choosing a seat close to the stage, close enough to hear every breath she took between notes. When she finished, Elena lowered her guitar. Her eyes met his, and a quiet understanding passed between them. She stepped down from the stage and walked toward him, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. "You came early," she said, her voice soft. "I did not want to miss anything tonight," Evan replied. She sat across from him, fingers interlaced nervously. "I have been thinking about everything you said, everything you did. You do not need to rush your decision," he said gently. "That is the thing," Elena whispered. "I am not rushing. I just needed to understand why I was scared." Evan leaned forward slightly. "Are you scared of me?" She shook her head. "No. I am scared of suddenly having something I never believed I deserved." He held her gaze, his expression warm and steady. "You deserve far more than you realize." Elena looked down. "You gave me something too big, Evan. Ownership of this place. It feels like a dream someone like me should not touch." He paused, then spoke with quiet certainty. "Elena, this is not charity. It is recognition. You poured your heart into this lounge long before I ever walked in. All I did was put structure around what you already built." Her breath trembled at his words. And he continued softly, "If you accept being co-owner, you will not owe me anything. Not gratitude. Not loyalty. Not anything beyond what you choose to give." She looked up slowly. "Then why did you do it?" His voice dropped to a gentle truth. "Because on the night I thought my life was falling apart, you sat with me. You gave me warmth. You gave me dignity. You healed what I could not name. You saved me before you knew my name." Elena felt her heart tighten. "And I wanted to save this place," he said, "because this room is where your heart lives. And because you deserve a future that does not disappear just because you cannot afford rent." Silence settled between them, but it was not tense. It was full, warm, like the air before a new beginning. Finally, Elena reached into her bag and pulled out the contract. She placed it gently on the table. "I have read every page," she said. "And there is no trick. No condition. You made sure of that." "I told you," Evan replied. "I wanted to give you something that lasts." Elena took a deep breath. "Then I want to accept it. Not because I feel obligated, but because I want to build something real here. And I want to do it with someone who understands why this place matters." Evan exhaled slowly, a quiet relief crossing his face. "Then we will build it together." At that moment, the owner approached, eyes wide with hope. "Does this mean you are staying with us, Elena?" She smiled. "Yes. I am not going anywhere." The room seemed to brighten instantly. The customers clapped softly, sensing a shift even if they did not know the details. Evan stood and extended his hand toward her, not demanding, not claiming, simply offering. Elena looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she placed her own in his. It was not a romantic declaration. Not yet. Just a promise, warm and steady like the music she played. As they stood together near the stage, the lights casting a gentle glow around them, Elena felt something she had not felt in years, hope that did not come from survival, but from possibility. The man she had saved had returned to save her too. Not with grand gestures, but with a quiet, enduring truth. The Sunrise Tea Lounge would live on. She would live on, and Evan Ward would remain by her side, beginning not with love declared, but with a shared future waiting to unfold.